My name is Azad Məmmədov. I represent Azerbaijan University of Languages. The title of my presentation is Contextualizing Time and Place in News Discourse, a Linguistic Approach. The goal of the paper is to explore time and place in news discourse, which have been extensively but mostly separately studied from different perspectives. In this connection, I have decided to revisit this topic from a new perspective that can reshape our understanding of this genre of media discourse. News discourse reflects the real-life events happened in the recent past, yesterday, have happened earlier today, are happening now, or will happen in the near or distant future in a specific place. So both time and place matter in this genre and in this genre of media discourse, and it's intriguing to study the role of time and place and their correlation in news discourse from the perspective of their multiple function. Such a linguistic approach can allow a more in-depth analysis of the concepts of time and place and can also help us to understand how these concepts are shaped in news discourse, not only from linguistic but also from political, social, economic, and cultural perspectives. The recent flood of emerging news in connection with the coronavirus pandemic makes this topic extremely relevant and original, as this developing topic has very important two dimensions, time and place. It's intriguing to study how these two concepts are shaped in the vast amount of news discourse produced in the first months of 2020. Thus, the study of the language of news and in general of the language of media can shed a light on a better understanding of their nature as a social and cultural phenomenon. Research question. News discourses have a common feature. They must answer to two key questions: when and where. This approach, which can be identified as the event-oriented, differs from the approach which can be characterized as the person-oriented, suggested by Wright. So our focus in the analysis of time and place in news discourse is based on the event-oriented approach. The analysis of the recent literature in the field suggests that the main focus in the study of news discourses prioritize time over place, and the authors in these studies mostly focus on the role of time and tense in the construction of news narratives and also in the construction of meaning in news and social media. Meanwhile, our work prioritizes neither place nor time, equally focusing on the correlation of the linguistic representations of time and place in news discourses. As the language in news discourses considered stylistically and functionally as one of the richest, it's intriguing to study this correlation of time and place in news discourses. For this purpose, in total, approximately 500 pages of various news texts, political, economic, social, cultural, health, sport news produced by the leading news agencies, Reuters, Associated Press, newspapers, Financial Times, The Times, USA Today, New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, Telegraph, and TVs, CNN, BBC, published between 2010 and 2020, have been collected for analysis based on qualitative methods such as contextual analysis and on quantitative methods such as the statistical analysis of the frequency of usages of the linguistic representations of time and place in news discourses. A method for linguistic metaphor identification has also been used in order to identify the linguistic metaphors and metonyms which represent time and place in the discourses under analysis. So we have divided the practical part of our paper into two parts. In the first part, I focus on the grammatical and lexical representations of time and place in news discourses. Among the grammatical representations, we have first of all to study various forms of the tense forms of the verb, the past simple, the present continuous, the present perfect, as well as the future simple tense forms, and also some other grammatical elements such as adverbs of time and place, which in the most cases function as the deictic elements, which have been well studied in linguistics and in linguistic pragmatics. The various forms of the tense forms of the verb in news discourses are crucial in terms of their role as the deictic references to the surrounding world, as seen below. Clemson tops coaches poll, defending champs #1 in preseason ranking for first time. As we see from this news text, the present simple tense form of the verb top plays crucial role in the temporal localization in this news text from USA Today. It's interesting to state that the producers of this news text do not feel necessity to represent place explicitly due to the specifics of this newspaper, USA Today, which is oriented mostly on the national, rather international news. So, place has been represented just implicitly, implying that the site is or the tournament took place in the United States. Another interesting linguistic representation of place and time. Another interesting representations of place and time in news discourses are the elements from figurative language, metaphors, and metonyms. In the second practical part of our paper, we focused on the analysis of metaphors and metonyms. This news text comes from the Times, again, locally oriented newspaper, not international oriented newspaper, which tells the story about news story about coronavirus pandemic. Coronavirus vaccine could be ready by September. Leading scientists 80% sure drug will work. A vaccine against coronavirus could be ready as soon as September. The British scientist leading one of the world's most advanced efforts has said. Sarah Gilbert, professor of vaccinology at Oxford University, told the Times she was 80% confident that the vaccine being developed by her team would work, with human trials due to begin in the next fortnight. The government signaled that it would be willing to fund the manufacture of millions of doses in advance if results looked promising. This would allow it to be available immediately to the public if it were proven to work. With ministers struggling to find a strategy to exit the lockdown, long-term hopes of a return to normality rely on a vaccine. As we see here, there is almost no explicit representation of place in this news text, except the use of Oxford University. On the other hand, we see numerous temporal markers in addition to the relevant tense forms of the verbs. Such temporal markers like by September, will work in the headline, sure in the headline, and some other previous. Yes, and some other grammatical elements representing time. For instance, like she was, like as September, again, the repetition of September, and some could be ready. So all these representations of time play a crucial role in the temporal localization in news text, in contrary to the not so many even unique representation of place, such as Oxford University in this news discourse. Probably the journalists of the Times, similarly to the journalists from the USA today, don't feel necessity to represent place as the newspaper believes that there is just one representation of place, such as Oxford University, sends right signal, right message to the audience in terms of localization, in terms of place where about which these news texts deliver their message. The results. Now, the statistical analysis of the data suggests that in total, the number of the linguistic representations of time, 192, exceeds the number of the linguistic representations of place, 44, per analyzed 20 news texts. Of course, some distinguished participants can say that it was obvious because, of course, time markers can exceed place markers or place markers because of the obvious fact that the linguistic representations of time in terms of number prevail in any text, the linguistic representations of place. But it's interesting that in some news texts, examples 1 and 2, there are no explicit linguistic representations of place, as we have just analyzed. Comparing the headlines with the main body of the news text, the headlines contain more elements from figurative language, especially linguistic metonymies, 17, 18, 19, 20, the examples number 17, 18, 19, 20. Various linguistic metaphors are common in the main body of the news text. The reason why the producers of news tend to use linguistic metaphor and metonymy so frequently is that they have strong pragmatic and cognitive effect on the audience. And it's interesting that the linguistic representations of place, especially metaphorical and especially metonymic representations of place, is quite common in the headlines, like for instance, Washington says or Poland sells, etc., etc., due to the fact that metonymies are more dynamic, and dynamism is usually common in the headlines rather in the main body of any news text. In addition, probably metaphors and metonymies can help the audience to understand the news text in a more specific and sometimes culturally marked ways, as all parameters of time and place matter in this genre. For us, White House, Scotland Yard, Pentagon, Christmas, Easter, we have many examples with these culturally marked representations of place play very important role in terms of understanding of the news text. As we see here, time and place and all parameters of time and place matter in this genre of media discourse. And now, conclusion. Thus, various grammatical, lexical, metaphorical, and metonymical representations of time and place are among the most common linguistic choices of the producers in news discourse. These devices are used for various construal and pragmatic purposes. In addition to the construal and pragmatic functions, they play the key role in the cognitive processes within news discourse. One of the most interesting is the instances of their usages which build the correlation of time and place, and thus temporal and spatial harmony in news discourse. For example, despite the obvious fact that the tense forms of the verb are not as explicit as other grammatical, lexical, especially metaphorical and metonymical representation of time and place, say, yes, if we compare the past simple tense form of the verb with yesterday, it's obvious that yesterday is more explicit than the past simple form of the verb. Or, for instance, Christmas is more explicit, or Easter is more explicit. But on the other hand, despite in overall the temporal markers prevail over spatial markers, both concepts and their linguistic representations are equally important in the news discourse. And the last and not least, there is only one issue that matters in news discourse, and in general terms in social life. It is meaning. Not only tense, time, and space, but both time and place equally play a crucial role in the process of meaning construction in news discourse. And these last remarks are one of our major conclusions from the analysis of time and place in news discourse. Thank you. And references. Thank you.